Today I'm going to show you how to turn any image into an illustration in Photoshop. Hey guys, and welcome to Phlearn. My name is Aaron Nace, and you can find me on Phlearn.com, where we make learning Photoshop and photography fun. And I'm excited about today's episode because it's going to be really difficult, and I don't always get to do really difficult things here on Phlearn. So this is really cool, and if you guys are into this sort of thing, this might be an episode that you'll want to watch a couple of times. The reason is we're going to go into channels, we're going to be going into selections, we're going to create a custom brush, and we're going to do all that to create a really cool, basically we're going to turn a photo into an illustration and make that look like it's chalk on a chalkboard. So we're actually doing something super complex today. So for those of you guys who really love to get in there and learn all the complexities and the really cool tools Photoshop has to offer, this episode is going to be perfect for you. We're going to go ahead and jump into our image because we've got a ton to do. So here's our image from Fotolia.com, and I was looking at this and I was like, man, this would be an awesome chance to make it look like we actually draw with chalk on the backboard. Like if you had taken a picture like this, I'm sure you guys have seen those images on the internet where it's like someone's come in and drawn something with chalk or a marker or whatever it is, and that's basically going to be the goal here. So we're going to start off by making a brush that's going to look like chalk. So to do so, let's go ahead and create a new layer, and I've just got my brush tool right here, just totally normal settings as of now, and this is what it looks like, right? Just a totally normal brush. Let's zoom in. That looks nothing like chalk, right? This is just a regular brush. So let's go ahead and make this look like chalk. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to hit D and then X to get our default colors, and we're going to choose white as our default color. There we go. And I'm going to go down from window down here to brush. So my goal is to make this look like it's chalk as I'm painting around. So I've got to kind of think like, what would chalk look like? Well, it's kind of varied, right? Like chalk, like it's bigger in some areas and smaller in some areas, and where it kind of like catches the, chalkboard and stuff like that. There's a lot of like kind of scattering going on. So we're going to kind of take that into account. I'm going to click here on our shape dynamics, and I'm going to turn my size jitter up. So what this is going to do is it's going to make some of these like larger and some of them smaller. So you can see from, it was totally normal just a second ago, and now this is what it looks like. All right, I'm going to hit Command A and then delete to just delete everything that's on the layer. So this is what I do when I'm trying to make a brush. Okay, now my minimum diameter, I'm going to turn this up as well. Okay, that's looking really cool. Now I also want this to I want to add a bunch of variability in here, like randomness, because I don't want this to look like it's just done in Photoshop. So I'm going to go back here where it says brush tip shape, and I'm going to actually change the roundness of it. Instead of being at 100%, we're going to do something like 50%. So it's going to look like this, which, if you go side to side, up and down, you're going to see there's a difference there. But this is not all. So like the roundness we just changed, let's go back to shape dynamics, and now I'm going to turn on my angle jitter. And you can see our little preview here as I bring up our angle jitter. What it's going to do is it's going to just make each one of these a different angle as I paint around. There we go. So each one of these is going to be a different angle there, and that wouldn't have done anything if I would have left the roundness at 100%, because it would have been round, right? Like if you turn a circle sideways, it's still a circle. All right, let's bring our spacing down. There we go. So these are going to be really close spaced together. That's looking really cool. So we can see it's looking more and more like chalk, right? All right, next I'm going to try to turn on scattering as well and see what that does. So just a little bit of scattering. There we go. We'll create a brush that's a little bit smaller. All right. There we go. That looks pretty cool. Now we're going to click on our transfer, and I'm going to bring my opacity jitter all the way up as well and see what that looks like. So we want something, again, that's just going to look like chalk. We're going to bring our spacing down a little bit more. All right. There we go. And scattering, we're going to bring our scattering down just a little bit. And we're going to bring our minimum diameter up here a little bit as well. So every time I'm making a custom brush like this, it's totally, let's bring our brush roundness a little bit up. It's just totally like a guessing game. Like I'm pretty much just plugging in these values and trying to figure out, okay, when's this actually going to look good? When is this going to look like the brush that that I actually want it to look like? All right, there we go. Let's turn that off. Flow jitter, I'm going to turn this on as well. All right, cool. And there we go. That's starting to look like, yeah, if I paint with that, you can see from what I started with to this looks a lot more like chalk. So that's exactly what I want. All right, flow jitter. Let me just see. I'm going to turn that back down to 0. I'm going to turn this to pen pressure. So if I don't press hard, it's going to just be light. So like if it'd be like a light chalk stroke, and the harder I press, it's going to be a little bit darker. I think that makes it a little bit more believable. Okay, so this is our chalk brush now. You can write around and it looks like chalk when we're painting, which is really, really cool. So this is the very, very, very first part of our tutorial. Like I said, today's episode is super complex. So after I created my chalk brush, what I'm going to do is just click right here and say new brush preset. We're going to go ahead and save that as chalk. There we go. So if I want to just write with chalk, that's all I have to do is just write around with my chalk brush, which is really cool. Okay, and you can make it larger and smaller and stuff like that, like any other brush. Okay, so there we go. That looks like a pretty good size. So we're just going to keep that size. It's a size of 10, you can see right there. All right, so that's the first thing we're going to do. And we actually are going to write with our chalk brush in just a little bit. But before we do that, I'm going to show you something else that we're going to basically turn an image into an illustration and then trace that illustration with this chalk brush. All right, so the image we're going to use is this image of these dumbbells here. And basically, I want to figure out how do we make these into an illustration. Now, this is where things get a little bit more complex. Let's go ahead and I'm going to hit Command T, and we're going to scale this down. There we go, because this is going to wind up being right about there. Okay, so figuring out how we get this to look like an illustration. Well, we need to start off by figuring out a good way to make this into a selection. And I'm going to use the lights and the darks to turn this into a selection. So to get this into a selection, there's a great method using channels. So we're going to click right over here on our channels, and red, green, and blue, in this case, because this is black and white, what we're actually going to be editing, it doesn't matter in this case which channel you use. But you can see the girl in the background, it changes based on the colors of her skin. So we're just going to duplicate the red channel here because we're going to turn this area into an illustration. So duplicate our red channel. Okay, and then I'm going to hit Command L to bring up our levels. So we've got a red channel, and then I've duplicated it. We're bringing up levels. I'm going to bring my black point up and my white point as well. All right, there we go. That looks super cool. So basically, we want this to be a lot more graphic, right? We want this to look a lot more like a graphic. We need to simplify it a lot because I'm going to have to turn this into a selection, and then that selection is going to need to be turned into a path, and then that path is going to need to be stroked with a brush. So I need it as simple as possible. That's why I'm bringing my dark point up and my white point as well. All right, there we go. Cool, that looks pretty good, and that's a really nice simple version of what we just had there. So we're going to hit OK. All right, so now that we have our super simple selection, or a super simple version of these dumbbells, what we're going to do is actually turn that into a selection. And when you're using channels, it's super easy. All you have to do is hold down Control or Command and click on the thumbnail of the layer. So we're going to click there, and you're going to see everything is turned into a selection. Now, when you turn a channel into a selection, it selects out the light parts, and it doesn't select out the dark parts. Okay? So let's go back to our layers, and I'll show you guys what that looks like. If I were to make this layer invisible, let's just say I created a new layer, my selection, I'm basically able to draw now in the light parts, right? Like I'm not able to draw wherever it was dark before, because that's what our selection looks like. So what I actually want to do is inverse my selection, because I actually want to draw where the dark parts are, because I need it to look like there's chalk there. So we're going to go to Select, and then down here to Inverse. Okay, now if I paint with my brush, it's still the chalk brush, which is cool. You can see I'm only able to paint there in where my actual dumbbells are, barbells, whatever these are. All right, there we go. So that's a really good start, but this still isn't what we want, right? That doesn't look like it's an illustration. That just looks like I made a selection and then kind of drew it in. All right, so let's go ahead and undo that. And I don't need anything else to be selected. So I'm just going to grab my marquee selection tool, and I'm going to hold down the Alt or the Option key and just make large selections here that's going to minus out all these areas from the selection, because we really only need just this area to be a selection. All right, there we go. Cool. So what we have now is basically just this is turned into a selection. If I hit Q for the quick mask, you can see we have now a selection that looks exactly like this. So every step we've taken up until this point has basically been trying to make a selection that looks like this, and that's exactly what we have. So we started out with a regular image. We simplified it using channels and levels. So remember, we brought up the black point and the white point. So now we have like, it almost looks like a stamp. Then we turn that into a selection with our channels, okay? Then we simplify the selection just with the regular marquee tool, and now we're ready to do something else with that selection. We want to turn that selection into a pen path, which you can do for any selection, by the way. You don't have to go through all this stuff. If you have a totally regular selection, you can turn any selection into a pen path, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so let's hit Q again so we can see what our selection looks like. Okay, so to turn this into a pen path, what we're going to do is I'm going to click on my Paths button, and we're going to click right down here. You're going to see, if I take my hand off my cursor, make work path from selection. So any selection you have, you can make a path from that. So I'm going to click there, and it's going to take a little while and kind of think, but there we go. That's our work path that it made from the selection. Really cool. So now we have this work path. It's basically just a path, right? That's the idea of it. So it's simulating what we would do if we actually were to draw it. It's, created an actual path for us. So what we're going to do is, I've got this path now. I'm going to go back to my layers, and I'm going to create a new layer. And now, back here on my paths, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to stroke path. Okay, so stroke path. Now, this is basically going to choose the path that we already created, which is now looking like the dumbbells. We're going to stroke this with the brush that we just made. Okay, so we're going to stroke this with the brush, which is our chalkboard brush. And we have the option to simulate pressure. We can turn this off or on. I'm going to see what it looks like when we turn this on. Okay, so we're going to hit OK. Just make sure you're on a new layer when you do this. All right, so let's hit OK and see what it does. All right, there we go. And that's basically what we've got from our stroke of the path. So we've taken basically what was just a regular image and turned it into these dumbbells. So I'm going to do this completely over again because I know this was a lot, and plus this is not as accurate as I actually want it to be. I want it to be a little bit better than that. All right, so let's delete this. I'll do it faster this time, and you guys can see it really doesn't take a ton to get this from a regular image to an illustration. Okay, so here we are one more time. We've got our regular image. I'm going to go to my channels. Okay, we're going to duplicate our blue channel or red channel. In this case, it doesn't matter. I'm going to bring up my white point, and we're going to bring up our black point. All right, there we go, and something like that. So we're going to hit OK. Now I'm going to hold Command or Control and click on my channels. Okay, now here basically I need to inverse my selection. So select and go down to inverse. So now I'm selecting out my blacks. Let's create a new layer, and I'm going to use my marquee tool, Alt or Option. So I want to take away the selection from the rest of my image, right? Because it selected, her face and everything like that. And if I don't take away all this area, it's going to try to turn that into a pen path too, which is going to get super, super tricky. Okay, now I can make this invisible. I've got my path selection here. I'm going to go back to my path, and then we're just going to do this again. There we go. So we've got a new path there, and it's basically mimicking what we had on our old path. Okay, so we're going to right click there. I'm going to go to make selection. Sorry, not make selection. We're going to go to stroke path, and then we're going to use our brush. There we go. Very, very cool. So you can see it did an awesome job getting us most of the way there, and it does look like an illustration, but it's not perfect, which I actually appreciate that it's not perfect in this case, because I want to go back and add my own, basically brush strokes using my Wacom tablet to make it look like it is a drawing, and that it's not something that Photoshop just kind of spit out. So what we're going to do is create a new layer, and then using the same brush, I'm basically just going to go in here and draw my own, well, if you need to rotate your canvas, you can do so by hitting the R tool, by the way, and that's sometimes will help you actually draw some things. So this, I'm basically just using my brush tool, and now I'm kind of going in here and basically drawing my own little bits of, dumbbell that would exist around this guy. And I find that doing this sort of stuff just really does help it look more like a drawing and less just like something Photoshop just actually stuck out. All right, there we go. And we're using the same brush, so everything should look totally normal and natural. There we go. So just kind of completing it in, but the steps that we did before this basically did most of our work for us, which is really cool. All right, let's shift click the two of those and hit Command G. Now we're going to create a new layer, and I'm just going to write with this same brush. All right, we're going to say work hard. Work hard. I guess play hard would make sense as well. All right, let's hit Command T on this group here. We're going to just size it down just a little bit. There we go. We've got our text. You know what? I am going to make it play hard. All right, we're going to use our brush tool, and I'm going to write play hard as well. Cool. So we'll basically move that down there, and then work hard is going to go, I don't know, we'll just make this a little bit smaller. Work hard, and then play hard. There we go. I don't know. You can barely read that, can't you? Play hard. Work hard can go down there. All right. This is an amazing piece of art. I'm pretty sure it's going to be going in a museum relatively soon. All right. There we go. Let's go ahead and scale that up just a little bit more so it actually fits there. Very, very cool. All right, so now that we have all those play hard, we've got our work hard, we've got this layer here. Everything is together. I want to do just a couple more things to make it actually look like it's chalk. So we're going to zoom in here. I'm going to shift click all those layers and hit Command G to group them. So we've got a group now that's all these layers. There we go. I'm going to duplicate this group by hitting Command J, and I'm going to hit Command E, which is going to merge all of them together. So now, instead of a group with a bunch of layers, I've just got one layer. That's everything we've done up until now. Okay, so to make this look a little bit more believable, I'm going to give it a little bit of a blur so it kind of blends into the chalkboard, makes it look like it's actually in there. So we're going to go to Filter, down here to Blur, and to Gaussian Blur. And just give it like a 1 pixel blur. All right, and next I'm going to double click here, and I'm going to go down to an outer glow. There we go, and I'm going to bring my size up a little bit on this. All right, and our opacity way down. And this is just going to give it a little bit of a bleed out, making it look like we're going to hit OK. So I'm going to turn this off and on so you can see. It's just going to make it look like it's a little bit more in the actual chalkboard, like, you know, there we go. Because chalk does have a little bit of a bleed to it, and I could actually move that or blur it or something like that. Let's put a layer mask on there as well. And then, you know what, I'm gonna layer mask this using the same brush that we had earlier, the actual chalk brush. But if I want to add some like really cool spacing in there, all I have to do is I'm going to open my brush again, and I'm going to go to my brush tip shape, and I'm going to bring up spacing. So now it's like little dots, basically, right? Let's bring up our spacing and our scattering. So now we have little dots, and that's basically just going to make it look like, yeah, there we go. It's going to make it look like these areas, like the chalk just didn't happen to hit. So again, adding a little bit more randomness to our chalk, and that's just going to help it look more believable. So there's a before and the after with this. All right, now I tried to do something super complex and take almost no time with it, but we can see there, it looks really cool. Like it does look like a hand drawing, even though I didn't have to draw most of that, and we've got still some text in here, and it looks like chalk. So I think we did an awesome job getting this done, and if you guys followed along with this, just congratulations, because it's not an easy thing that we did here. Let's take a look at our before, and here's our after. Thanks so much for watching this episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I really wanted to show you guys some cool things you can do with custom brushes, as well as channels and selections and paths, and stroking those paths with the custom brushes that we created in the beginning of the episode. If you like what we're doing here at Phlearn, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can receive free episodes just like this one every single week. And comment down below if you have an idea for an episode. We'd love to fill your idea in an episode. That doesn't make any sense, but I think you know what we're talking about. And share Phlearn with your friends. That's how we grow as a community and continue to bring these awesome free videos your way. Thanks so much, guys, and we'll Phlearn you later. Guys, thanks so much for watching. Oh gosh, I'm gonna fill your ideas in an episode. Ooh, I talk so good.